Okay, we're looking at the bilge. As you can tell, this bilge has a little bit of water, which is quite normal. There is another section here, which has a little more bilge. Bilge basically means the lowest part of the boat. Those are your keel boats. And we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 keel boats that are visible. And what you want to look for is make sure that there's no corrosion on them, and they don't appear to be bent or loose.
No corrosion on what?
On the keel bolts or the nuts. That's what you're looking for. Right in this area right here. This your keel bolt. This will be your nut.
Okay.
This is your bilge pump. You want to make sure that it's operating. And on some boats, what you're going to have is you're going to have a float switch. And this one in particular does not have a float switch. But you can tell that it's operating by turning on the switch. Okay. This is a typical water tank. Okay. There's always going to be at least 3 openings on every tank. You got this one right here, which is a small breathing hose. Okay, this is your breather. It's going to go up this hose and it's going to go somewhere on the outside of the boat. And then as gravity dictates, you want to put the water in at the top of the tank, which brings us to this, which is where we put water into the tank through this opening. The other opening is going to be at the bottom of the tank, and it's going to be somewhere in this area right here, which is the outlet hole, and the hose is going to be connected. Sometimes there's going to be a marriage between this tank and another tank, and sometimes they'll have an extra hole, which in this case is this one right here, which is actually an inspection hole, an inspection port, or it could be also be called a cleaning port. Now what we're looking at is we're looking at a couple of items. One of them is going to be fixed, and what you got over here is actually you got sealant all the way around. And what is happening is that this is your depth transducer. That's what it is. This one over here to the left, you can actually service it, you can unscrew it, and you can take it apart. But as you lift it up, there's 2 mating sections. You got a male and female, and you have to make sure that both of them are matched properly, otherwise there's going to be a leakage. What this one does and what it has is a paddle wheel, which actually calculates your speed by doing a certain amount of revolutions, and this information actually goes to your gauges and tells you your approximate speed. This is also the B berth, and somebody that's probably around 5'5" through 5'7" could actually sleep comfortably over here. The only drawback would be as they put the board down to put this cushion, you have to open the door, and that could be a drawback. But it's a nice space for kids or a couple of kids. And this is a board that you will pull out to increase the area, and then you put the cushion right on top of it. This is your starting battery. Okay, they're actually going to be both house and starting battery are going to be about the same size. On some of our boats, there will be a third battery, which is going to be strictly for the engine, and it's usually a car type battery. This type of batteries are marine batteries. One of the things that you're looking for is right in this section right here. This is your connector. What you're looking for is for a little bit of corrosion, and this battery does have a little bit of corrosion on the surface, which is kind of like a turquoise bluish discharge, and that's due to the chemical reaction on the battery itself. You also need to check in those caps. You open them up and you can see the acid level And if they're a little low, you're supposed to add a little bit of water. And it's not just any type of water, it has to be distilled water, which is, there's a container right here of distilled water. However, this is something that boat chiefs are the ones that do this. The house battery, there is an identical battery like this one in this section right here. So if you were to open it up, there's going to be another battery. And again, what you're checking for are the connectors, and make sure that there's no corrosion, and also the water. This tank over here is black water, or the holding tank for the head. And you're always going to find the holding tank almost always right next to the head. And our head in our case is right next door to us, okay? And like I said before, there's going to be always 3 openings in a tank. You got this opening right here, which is a breather. Then you're gonna have one towards the top, which in this case is right in this section right here. I'm actually pointing at it, and that is your entrance hole. This is where the contents from the marine head comes in, and there's going to be an outlet hose. In our case, it's also right over here. It is right at the bottom. Okay, and like in our previous example, there's going to be an extra hole in this one, and in this case it's actually a gauge to tell you how full the contents are. The hose that comes out the bottom is actually this one right here, and what it does, it actually goes to 2 places. One of them is going to be your macerator, which is this electrical device right here, which actually acts like a blender at the house. Okay, but in this case it's blending all the contents from the head, and it's actually bringing it out through this hose right here, and out the seacock right here, okay, which is your outlet. Okay, now you discharge every time you're 3 miles away from land. That's what the Coast Guard requires. Now if you didn't get a chance to use the macerator, what you need to do is you need to come over and use the pump out. And in this hose right here, it actually goes up. It keeps going up, and it just gets buried in the back of the bulkhead of the boat. But it actually leads to your pump out opening, which is up on the sole of the boat. Okay, now what we're looking at is we're looking at the through hulls, or seacocks, that come down inside the head and below the sink itself. Right in this section over here, this hose is actually your drain for the sink. Okay, this one has a through hull right here, a seacock, and this one discharges it directly into the ocean. This through hull right here is actually the one that brings water, seawater, into the toilet itself. Okay, and we're going to cover that in a second. What you have is you have a valve which tells where you want the water to come from, whether you want it from the fridge or you want it from the shower drain. Okay, this is a diverter valve, okay, to get all this water into the bilge itself. Now, as it goes up this tube, there's going to be a filter. Okay, that's the filter. You have to make sure that filter is clean every time you use the head, especially the fridge and the shower, because it will fill up with junk in there. This right here is a pump, which actually drains water you got coming in, whether it's the shower or the fridge. It will actually pump it out and drain it out. Now, this is a valve, okay, a pump. You can actually fill the bowl, the toilet bowl, you can actually fill it, or you can drain it, okay? Now, when it comes to the water coming in, this hose right here, this is actually seawater, but we're currently not using seawater. We normally use fresh water. But anyway, this hose right here, a lot of times they'll have a type of elbow, which is actually an anti-siphon valve. So if you have any type of problems with the boat and the boat is taking in water, the water would actually cut off at the siphon. Now, this valve right here, if you put it to the wet position, it's going to introduce water in. But if you put it to the dry position, it's actually going to push all the contents from the toilet to the holding tank. You do not use toilet paper, or at least try not to use toilet paper. If you need to use toilet paper, please put it in a some type of sit bag. Just contain it in there. And every time if you're gonna do, put some Hershey bars in there or Snicker bars, put a little bit of water. And if it's a little sticky, what you're gonna have to use is you're gonna have to use a little bit of water to try to flush it out. And if you do take a lot of fiber, what you need to do is you need to break it up, because look at the opening. The opening is not really all that big, and if you need to break it up, you need to break it up so it can actually go to the holding tank. So we just turned the water pressure on, which is this switch right here, and we also turn on the Perco to all, which on this boat is on the opposite side, and we got it on the all position. This is your shower, and you can pull it all the way out, bring it into the toilet bowl, and just open the valve. You get a little bit of water in there. Our tanks are a little empty, and you will introduce a little bit of water. And after you put the water in and you do your business, let's say that you just wanted to, all you did was basically urinate, and that's no problem. Okay, now you switch the valve, okay, or the selector, to the dry position, and you grab a hold of the handle and you bring it all the way up, all the way down, all the way up, all the way down. And what that's doing is actually taking the contents of the bowl to the holding tank. Okay, every boat's going to have some type of safety equipment. In this case, on Osprey, they're on port side, and they're clearly labeled as jack lines and your harnesses. And this, whenever you're on a cruise, this will also become storage for whatever is heavy and wet. You normally want to put it at the bottom. When it comes to Osprey, you have a radar, you have a stereo, which should never be on because you should be listening to the splashing of the water, and you got your very high frequency radio, your VHF. Okay, this is the mic right here, and of course you press to talk, and you got the button right here, which is you press it and it'll get you to channel 16, which actually belongs to the Coast Guard, and channel 9, which is usually the one for Harbor Master.
Remote for the VHF.
In this section over here, you have your electrical switches, and you also have a way to test the batteries. You can test battery number 1, which in this case is the engine battery, by pressing the switch towards the engine, and in this case it's telling us that it's about 12.8, 12.7, which makes it okay, and the house battery is about the same. Okay, and then you put it back to the center position, you cancel it out. What we did earlier, we just turned on the water pressure. So we turned the switch from left to right. And one of the things that you can notice over here, that there's 2 switches that have lights on them. Okay, this one is the LPG solenoid, and this one's going to be the Bilge one, which usually comes on when the pump comes into operation. Okay. Now there's another important switch, which is this one right here, AC on. Most boats are going to have some type of switch that in reality, before you disconnect your heater, you should switch it to the off position and disconnect all the electrical items. And then when you reconnect them, after you come back, you switch it back to the on position. And as you can tell, there's a little light right there, a little green light. And if there's any problems and there's a reverse polarity, this light will come on.
Phone charger.
This particular boat actually has a windlass, and the windlass is right here. This is the switch. So push it, pull it. And it also has a circuit breaker. And what it is kind of like a, this has to be on, okay? Because even though the PER goes on all, if this one's off, none of your instruments are going to work, okay? Because this is actually another switch for this Pergo, okay? But normally we just leave it on, okay? And the Pergo, whenever you're cruising, it should be under E1, off, all, or 2, okay? Normally what I do and what is suggested when the boat is completely off, you set it to the off position. When you turn the engine on, you isolate the number 1 engine, okay? When you're under power and you're cruising around, you switch it to all. So all batteries, both batteries are being charged. And when you get to a cruising destination, you take it to 2. And the idea with taking it to the Pergo to number 2 is that you're only utilizing the house battery to run all the appliances, all the lights and everything else. And when you want to turn the engine on, you turn all the switches off, you push it back to 1, you start the engine, and if you're going to be using the engine for for more than a few minutes, you just press it to all. You keep charging all the batteries, especially the number 2 battery, which you used the day before or whatever it was, and you charge it up, and you can go back to that indicator to see whether it's fully charged or not. But when the engine's running, the voltage is going to be somewhere around 14.5, 14.7, somewhere in that area. This particular section of the boat, what you have, if you have the through hole for the sink, the kitchen sink, the galley sink, and you also have the hoses from the tank that we saw at the B berth. It actually comes this way, and it's going to marry with any other tanks that will be online. This is our galley section, and in the galley, of course, you're going to have a triangle, which is going to be your fridge, which is very roomy, very, very roomy inside. And there's also an opening at the bottom, which actually, whenever you have a little bit of ice that melts or anything that drains in there at the bottom, it's going to go towards the head with that diverter valve that we talked about. Now in this section right here, you have your stove, which is a 2-burner stove, and it also has an oven. Now the oven is a little tricky to start. However, it doesn't really require a rocket scientist. You have this little safety switch, which must be the press in order for you to light it. And also make sure that when you are lighting up the burners, you actually take it to ignite and you hold it pressed down as you're using the striker, and hold it there for about I would say about 5-6 seconds, and then turn it to the whatever position you want. And what we're going to do in a few seconds is we're going to go ahead and actually turn it on. You have a little bit of dry storage in this area. You have some extra storage items right here, right in this area, and also this area right here.
Dishes, paper plates, bowls, frying pan, Salt and pepper. The fridge stays open. To close it, you have to pull this.
And of course, your sink is right here. One of the things you have to remember is try not to put any grease or anything down the drain, because it will clog up your through hole. Now this is the sequence to light up your stove. This is where the propane tank's at. So you open this up. There's a valve right here, which you want to turn on. And to turn it on, you turn it counterclockwise to the left. And you don't have to turn it all the way, but just turn it slightly to the left. Okay, there's also going to be a solenoid right here, which is this little device right here. This is your propane LPG solenoid, which what it does, it cuts off the gas or the fuel going towards the stove. You have a valve right here, which actually tells you how much fuel you actually have. Now, sometimes they're not too accurate. The best way to check how much fuel you have in the tank is to just have it weighted. And this is your regulator right here. Now what we're going to do, since we turn the fuel on and we know that we have enough pressure, now we're going to go down below and we're going to turn the stove on. Your next procedure is going to be to turn on the LPG solenoid, and when we turn it to the right, a red light's going to come on. And as you remember, this is a safety item. So at night, if you ever have any type of fire, you can just come in and shut it off. And how do you know which switch it is? Because you got this red light over here. So you need to press, take it to the left, which is ignition. Just wait a few seconds, because we just turned the valve on. We just turned the solenoid on. And I'm just starting to smell a little bit of fuel. So right now I'm going to press it. I'm going to hold it, and release. And we are on high. Now, the way to turn this off when you're done for the day, let's say you did a little bit of cooking and you shut it off, and you want to go ahead and make a little bit of coffee same night, and you restart it. Okay, and that's all good. And now if you want to turn it off for the night or after a cruise, what you do is you leave the burner on, and you leave it on, and you go back to the tank and you close it. And as you can tell, the gauge is actually starting to go down. So what we're doing is we're bleeding the lines. I'm going to close this, and now when we go down below, the burner is going to be off. So the burner is off, and we can go ahead and close the valve. And we turn the solenoid off. Okay, so right now what we're doing is we're checking the back section of the engine. This being the engine right in this section right here. And you have the exhaust manifold, okay, which is actually in this section over here. Okay, and this is where the exhaust gases actually come down this hose right here. And it goes into the aqua flow. And this is where it mixes with the water that's coming in, seawater coming in via the impeller. And you got the water and the gases being married in this hose, and then just go out the aqua flow. So you can basically think of this as a muffler, but it's a long muffler, because this to this section will be all your muffler section right here. This is a transmission, this right here. This is your transmission dipstick, which in reality you shouldn't have to check. That's boat chief, the one that does it. Now in this section right here, what that is your shifter. So if for any reason the shifter gets disengaged, you can actually use this to shift the engine from forward, neutral, or reverse. Forward is actually pushing this back. Going in reverse is actually going forward, so it's the opposite. That's forward.
That's forward, neutral,
reverse.
and reverse. Neutral,
forward,
forward,
neutral, reverse.
reverse.
So right now what's going on is actually I took out the through hull, and we're getting quite a smell from this. And as you can tell, it has a lot of growth in there, which we're gonna have to rinse it out. Okay, what that is algae. And algae that is actually converting into something else, and that something else really stinks. Anyway, one of the things you want to make sure is that when you see the through hull, and if you ever have any type of problems, you want to see what the water flow is. And I want you to see what the water flow is right here, Adam. Okay, that's quite a bit of water coming in. And that's pretty much what you want. You want a good flow of water coming into the engine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close it down. And I'm going to have to clean this in a few minutes. But we're going to have this clean before we turn the engine on. Alright guys, so basically we got the front of the engine right here. This is your alternator. This is what charges your batteries. This is a belt. You could call it a fan belt. This is your water pump pulley. The water pump will be right in the back, which is this little section right here. What this is your pressurized system. This is where the coolant goes in. This is your thermostat housing. This is where you actually could put the coolant on. And this is your hose, which goes to the overflow, and which is the little tank right over here in the back. And what we're looking for is we're looking for the level, or somewhere between the low and the full section. Now, if the engine's cold, you want it to be closer to the low section. But if when it pressurizes, you want it to be somewhere in the hot section. Okay, so this one's about halfway, so that's just about perfect. Now, this right here is your air filter. These are your injectors right in here, and these are actually your decompressors. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and show you the way they operate. But the way, all you got to do is you got to push them back and turn the engine on. And there's 3 of them because this one's the 3-cylinder one. So we're going to show you that. Now, one of the differences on your fuel system when it comes to diesel doesn't all that fuel that gets into the injectors is not actually used. Some of it goes back. So you're going to have 2 types of hoses. You're going to have metal hoses like this, and then in the bottom side you're going to have ones that are made out of rubber because they're non-pressurized. Now in this section right here you have a pulley. Now this pulley is actually for your raw water intake. Okay, so this is another water pump just like the previous one, but this one's for the non-pressurized system or seawater, and the previous one is for your pressurized system or coolant. We have an oil filter right in this section right here, and we have on the starboard side of the engine we have a couple of cables. One of them is going to be your fuel shutoff, and the other one's going to be your throttle. So whenever you want to go fast, you push the throttle forward, and one of those cables will be moving, and the other one will be just to cut the engine off. Now, how can you tell? Usually the way you can tell is by an adjusting screw. Like in this case, we got an adjusting screw right here. So this one's telling me that this is for the throttle. Okay, so whenever I want to give it full throttle, all I have to do is just go back on it, and that's giving it full throttle. So I'm going to push it back to normal, and this one's going to be the fuel shut off. So by pulling it, I'm shutting off the engine by pushing it towards the front. I'm actually allowing the fuel to flow.
Kill switch. So this is how you test if the kill switch is working. Willie's pulling it and I can see that it's moving. Here's how you tell if the throttle is working.
Okay. One more item you need to know is this little cap right here, this yellow cap. And what that is your oil filler. Okay, sometimes some of our boats will use a little bit of oil on the way to the island, so you want to be able to measure that. Now, we need to know where the dipstick is at, and we'll find it in a second, and I'll show it to you. Now, what we're showing you is actually the dipstick to check the oil level on this engine, which is right in this section over here. It's towards the middle of the engine, but it's easier to get to it through the back. Now, there's another section over here, which is your starter. This is your starter, and this is your starter solenoid. Basically, it looks like a small can, maybe a can of beans, and a small tomato paste size can actually has quite a few wires going in there. And a lot of times when I travel, what I do is I actually use my own remote starter, or I'll carry a screwdriver. And you have to touch a couple of terminals. One of them is the battery, and the other one's the starter, and the S switch, which is coming from the starter. And what that does, it bypasses all the wiring, because sometimes you do have some issues and the starter will not start. Another way of doing it is by tapping the starter, but this video by no means is making you an expert on this, so just call Cito. Now, if you learn about engines and you learn a few more tricks, you might be able to go ahead and do this. However, if you do it improperly, you could actually have a fire. That's a compressor for the fridge, okay?
Okay.
That hose over there, okay, that's actually the bilge.
Which one?
That one over there.
Over
That black
here?
one? Yeah, that black one over there.
Okay.
Okay, not this one, that's electrical. And see how the hoses are white and red?
Uh-huh.
Red's gonna be your hot water. And I don't know if you can tell. Okay.
Okay, he's turning the wheel.
So we can just, next step is to turn the engine. So we already got the perk on, and we're going to be turning the engine, but the way we're going to turn the engine on is by engaging the decompressors. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press all the switches I normally press, which is the autopilot. I'm going to shut off the water pressure. I'm going to turn on the navigation, the VHF, and that's it. Actually decompressing one cylinder, two cylinders, three cylinders. And now what I need to do is I need to lower the steps, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to turn the engine on. However, you should never turn the engine on if the cover is not in place. But as of now, we're only doing a demonstration, and we're going to keep the cover off. But never ever try doing this yourself.
Life jackets, right? Life jackets. Oh, there's the barbecue in the blue bag.
Yeah.
Seat cushions.
Okay.
Wood plugs. Cleaners. Here's the shore power. Don't forget to unplug it before backing out.
Alright guys, in this section we also have an AC switch. This is an extra one. And we have the power cord over here in the back where it hooks up, right in here. And if you get a green light or a blue light in this case, it actually indicates having power to the cable. We have the heater, the water heater. Okay, and there's a good bonus on this boat, which is you have a shower in the back. You can actually take a shower back here, and you do have hot water and cold water, and the valves are right in this section. The hot water, cold water valve, and the shower head. This section right here is where your emergency tiller hooks up to. And as I'm moving the steering, you can actually see the rudder posts move. So what we do is we actually get this device, which is usually on a red bag, and we hook it up. And this one hooks up like so, and the slots actually hook up over that bolt that is there. And you can actually turn it with this device over here, this pipe. And to show you that it turns, I'm holding it, and you can actually see the holes move. Okay, it's not too comfortable to be steering the boat with this, but it's better than not having anything at all. This is another emergency item, and what this is for is actually your manual bilge pump, which hopefully you'll never need. All you do is insert up and down. And in this section over here, you also have the aft anchor, which in this particular boat is actually a Danforth. Every one of our medium and large boats, they have their own outboards for the dinghy, and this boat is no exception. But this one has a device which you can actually hook up a line to it, and there's a little pulley system which actually makes it a lot easier to put the outboard on a dinghy. Combination to the lock is the same as the boat. Things that you have to be real careful about are the fillers, and in this case you got two. You got water and diesel, and you see the proximity. Please do not get them confused. Okay, it's very bad to put diesel in a water tank and vice versa, and it will cost you at least anywhere between $1,000 and $1,500 for the mistake. So always read, always make sure that you're pumping diesel into the diesel tank or water into the water tank.
Here's the head.
Okay, we're having a top view of the head, and guess what? The waist is actually right next to it. So this will be your pump out outlet. When you come back from a trip or you come back from a day sail that you actually use the head, you should actually pump the tank clean. Raising the sails are actually quite easy on this particular boat. If you look up the mast, there's going to be a couple of lines that lead back. One of them is actually the main halyard, and the other one could be considered a topping lift or an alternate halyard. Okay, this sail pack makes everything very easy. When you're putting the sails away, if you actually did not mess with it and try to loosen it up, the sail will go right into the sail pack, so you don't need to worry about it. To deploy it, all you got to do is you grab this strap and you pull it, and you will pull it all the way back, okay, to that section over there, and you are ready to sail, to raise the sails. Now, when you're raising the sails, you really have to make sure that you're dead into the wind. you really want to be facing into the wind, because otherwise your battens are going to be catching on those lines over here. Also, it could be considered a lazy jack. Okay, now when you're reefing on this boat and any boat, what you want to do is you want to keep tension in both the halyard and your reefing line. Okay, because if you keep any of those, if you keep one of the sheets lazy and you just let it go and you put no pressure on it, there's like on this particular boat over here at the bottom of the mast, you have blocks, and those blocks, see all this extra line right here, all this extra line could actually get knotted, or it could get caught, or you could have some type of issue with it. Okay, so as long as you keep both lines equal tension on them, you should be totally fine. Now, in regards to operating the sail pack, there are zippers right here. Okay, there's really no need for you to go into this section over here. You should not unzip it. Now remember, this is Susan's boat. Okay, she's the boat chief on it, and she actually has done the spacing on all lines just right. There is no need for you to put your 2 cents into it. Okay, believe me, they have placed almost $1 into putting everything correct and everything right into this boat. So all you need to do is just unzip, raise the halyard, or raise the main, and you got to make sure that you're pointing into the wind. Case close. And at the close of business, whenever you go anywhere, you are in an anchorage or whatever, what you want to do is you want to bring the sail down and zip it. And the reason why you want to zip it is because this sail cover is actually protecting the sails from UV rays.
And you leave the halyard on?
And the halyard is always left on. So when you put the boat away, you zip it all the way, and you want to make sure that the sail itself and the halyard was actually below the sail cover. As you can tell, one of them's a little longer than the other one, and just use common sense. This one's a larger one, and if you put the larger one in, okay, you most certainly can use it. Okay, however, it will hit the window. There's 2 ways of using a winch. You can actually go turning it all the way, or you can just do this number. You can go back and forth, and therefore I can actually use a larger winch handle. Now, if I use the proper winch handle for this winch, it will be this one, the short one, and the short one can actually go all the way around. But I prefer to have a little bit more leverage, therefore I do use the larger one. However, this is the way I'll use it. There's a kitty.
Okay, there's the kitty. Charts. Kept under the port couch.
They keep them all over the place.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so. All right.
Okay. Q flag.
Mm-hmm. Fair wind. One of the main things that you're looking for is the expiration date. And the way to operate a flare, you take the cap off. It exposes something very similar to a match. And then you got the striker part. And what you do is you put part A with part B, you strike it. And obviously you're going to be doing this outside the boat, and you're going to be on the lower side of the boat. There is a union right here, right in this section over here. You want to make sure that there's nothing oozing out of there. because even if the expiration date is good, but you got a little bit of gel oozing out of here, you should not use it. Most of our boats are actually going to a flashlight electronic type of flare, which you only need one now. But this flare kit actually has the shells and the gun itself to you load up the cartridge in there and you pull the trigger and you fire it. There's also an emergency flag, and what this shows, you're in some type of distress, and people should come over and give you some aid. On all of our sound making devices, one of our members, Lon, actually came up with every single designation for noise. Basically, the way I explain it is you got 1 blast, 2 blasts, 3, and then 5. 1 blast is basically like passing each other the American way, which is left to left. 2 blasts is the European way, which is right to right. 3, you're going astern. And 5, you're actually, something's happening, I don't understand your intentions, or we're going to crash, or, everything broke loose. Okay, this is a certificate of documentation. This vessel is actually documented, and all the details are there. You have important phone numbers. You also have Boat US towing card, which allows you to get the vehicle towed from point A to point B, which will be back to the docks, but you will have to pay for it. And later on, you'll be partially reimbursed by the club. There's a certificate of liability insurance. We also have a vessel safety check. On the outboard, we have an easy lift, which makes it easier to lift and take the outboard to the dinghy. You have a manual for Osprey, which tells you all the different details of what the stroke, what the bore are, the horsepower on the engine, everything. And one of the important things about it is the boom itself, the boom bang, how it works. It tells you the little details. If it ever comes apart, you know how to put it back together. There's also a map of where everything is at. And Susan, the boat chief on this boat, has actually done an excellent job at keeping everything in detail. Then you got some more manuals telling you about the table of contents, about the electrical, engine, and just about every system on the boat. It tells you the startup procedure, how to do your sails, the rigging, safety equipment, where it's at, navigation equipment, ground tackle, how to operate the head, and as you can see, it's been updated. She does not like to use toilet paper in this head, and I totally agree with it. Freshwater system, the galley, and the water valves. It tells you where the water valves are at. There's also documentation on how to use the chart plotter. It tells you all the little details about it. Also, the radar, the BHF radio, the remote on the BHF, and there is also a quick reference as to how to do it. And after that, you got the log sheets. One of the things that you want to make sure is that you read the last 3. That's the first thing you should do. Read the last 3 logs and find out whether the boat's safe to go or not. 1, 2, and 3. According to what I've seen, the boat is safe to go.